Today we're doing an analysis of the Iskoort, or the Isk and the Yort. One and the same, two parts of a whole, three parts of a quarter, I don't freaking know. But that's what we're doing today. We're doing an analysis on this bizarre alien race which are pretty much exclusively in this book. A brilliant book, book 26, The Attack. So first things first, what are the Iskoort? What do they look like? Let's go through some quotes from this book that describe the appearance of the Iskoort. A whole gaggle of Iskoort were rushing us, honking with the diaphragm in their bellies and yammering in thought speak, pushing us, shoving us by sheer mad exuberance towards the edge. They were not the most frightening looking race we'd ever encountered, but they were definitely not even slightly human. They had heads like vultures thrust forward on long necks. The necks protruded from shoulders that were a sort of oval platform, flat across. From the shoulders dropped two arms, one on each side, each arm jointed 3 times, ending in a hand made up of one very long tentacle-like finger, and 2 smaller, hooked, sharp-clawed fingers. They walked in a way that made it seem they were crawling on their knees, backwards. Not that they went backwards, they went forwards. They had 2 thick legs, maybe a metre long. Then came what looked like knees, followed by calves that extended forwards, lying flat against the ground. Those ended in feet, each with a single long prehensile toe and 2 smaller claws jutting from the sides of thick pads. Their midsection was bare of clothing and looked weirdly like an accordion made of veined pink flesh. It moved, wheezing out a sort of running commentary on their thought speak. It was the sound of a whine, a grating, annoying whine that rose or fell depending, evidently, on how excited or mad or agitated they were. Iskoort faces were not attractive. They were roughly triangular with the point towards the top, which left no room for a pair of eyes to fit, so their eyes, pink as a rabbit's, were stuck on short stalks. They had mouths, but didn't use them to communicate. They pretty much stayed shut, opening only every few minutes to suck in air and reveal a fat blue tongue and tiny blue-tinged teeth. Those are some pretty in-depth descriptions of what the Iskoort looked like. Not even vaguely human, this weird musical instrument-shaped thing with a vulture's head and backward legs. And 3-jointed arms. Wacky, inflatable, arm-flailing tube man sort of style. That's a bit of a mouthful. Christ, I can't fucking speak today. This is your fault. Woman.
Why?
I don't know, just is.
Piss off.
Alright then. The Iskoort live far, far away. In a galaxy far, far away. I don't believe we ever actually learned the name of the planet, but we certainly learn of the city that the Iskoort live in. It's called the City of Beauty, and it is described thusly. We were kilometres up in the air, kilometres from the ground, which we could see just over the edge of the platform. The platform with no railing, no warning. The platform that just stopped suddenly. Below us was a twisting, leaning, propped up on gigantic support beams structure of other platforms. Floors, I guess, all stuck here and there, sticking far out and not so far. Above us was more of the same, till you'd swear the monstrous construction would reach the moon, assuming the Iskoort had a moon. All of this was built of brilliantly coloured blocks or bricks or segments. Imagine that someone starts with all the Lego in the world, add in all the Duplo and cheap bargain Duplo and let some humongous kid assemble them all into a tower 100 kilometres tall. Assume that no sensible adult ever becomes involved, except to come along occasionally and wedge in what looks like crutches the size of skyscrapers. The floors could have been 2 metres apart or 2 kilometres apart. It was like no one worked out till they'd built it. Back from the edge, the small buildings began. They looked like clusters of igloos, blue and gold and white and green and red. Some were jumbled into piles several layers tall, others were freestanding. The surface of the planet was a reeking, swampy mess of a place. I gained altitude to get above the sulphur smell, but then had to rest. Flying outside it, I could see just what an awesome structure it was. Nothing ever built on Earth even came close. The pyramids would not have made the footing for the smallest pillar at the base of this thing. The World Trade Center and the Sears Tower were dinky toys. The Iskoort may have been the most obnoxious species in the galaxy, but they could definitely build. So from these descriptions we can get a general sense of the area, the City of Beauty. Far below on the surface of the planet is this reeking, swampy, not very pleasant place. So whenever the Iskoort came along, if they were there to start with, might have been, we don't know, they obviously thought, this place sucks, so we're going to live up there. Very much like the Ketrans. You know, they didn't want to live down there, they wanted to live up there. Funny that. Maybe an Annie theory for another day. But they decided we're going to build up and live in these weird structures of just complete... both a lack of and an abundance of imagination, it seems like. Just higgledy-piggledy all over the place. Almost Lego-like structures, each like made of colourful blocks. And they live in that. And we get descriptions of the buildings as well. And we get some more descriptions of buildings and the interiors of some of these buildings here. Apartments were built strong enough to resist the often rambunctious Warmaker Iskoort. We were standing outside a building shaped like a pyramid, maybe 10 stories high in Earth terms. It was white, the gleaming artificial white of plastic, and featured a wide, arched door outlined in rows of neon like a rainbow. Something that must have been music was blaring. We have reached the Temple of the Servant Guild. The room was as gaudy as the exterior of the Servant Guild temple. The walls were so glaringly white they seemed to make your eyeballs vibrate. What wasn't white was neon, or something like neon, in bold primary colours swirled here and there, up walls and across ceilings and inset in the floor. But the coloured light did not seem to touch the whiteness. So the buildings are sturdily built to stop the Warmaker Guild coming in, and we'll discuss the Warmaker Guild in a little bit. But they love their colour. They're a very colourful species, the Iskoort. Very few things are grey or brown or black. It's blaringly white or multicoloured. But there are some areas that are grey and brown. Specifically the industrial areas, the factory areas. And one thing I have to say about that is each platform in this City of Beauty seems to be dedicated to a certain function of society, distinct from everything else, based on colour, the colour of the platform level that they're on at the time, as described here. We came out on a new level, mostly dark blue and utterly different from the previous level. Here we saw none of the igloos, only a vast field of small cylinders, maybe 60 centimetres tall. Energy storage, Guide explained, and led us down another stairway. This level, this mustard yellow level, was teeming with Iskoort, moving slowly along narrow avenues between open front buildings. It was easy to recognise what this level was. It's the shopping mall, Rachel said, a bazaar. This level was different than any we'd seen thus far. It seemed to be an industrial district. The separation from the floor above was several hundred metres. The predominating colours were grey and brown, and the factories, if that's what they were, looked as drab and windowless and shabby as any factories on Earth. Here, as we flew above them, we met a new variation on the Iskoort. These had longer, stronger arms, more massive shoulders, and their eyes were hooded with thick, retractable lids. So we know that the areas of the City of Beauty are strictly segmented. There's a green park one as well, there's a yellow one, there's the dark blue one, there's the shopping one, and there's the industrial grey-brown one. But not only is the place segmented, but also the society is. In that last quote I gave you just then, it mentioned a completely different type of Iskoort. We find out as we go through this book that the Iskoort, much like the City of Beauty, are strictly segmented. Here's the evidence for that. They were Iskoort, not like Guide, at least not exactly. The bodies were mostly the same, but the heads and hands were different. Their heads were wider at the top, with 2 little nubs of horn. Their hands were less delicate, the claws larger than the tentacle. Their legs were flexed, not as flat, allowing them to move faster in leaps, not crawls. These are the Iskoort of the Warmaker Guild, Guide said. I am a trader, a probationary member of the Guild of Traders. I'm not interested in violence and killing and slaughter. No, it is the members of the Criminal Guild and the Warmaker Guild who buy Howler memories. The Servant Guild was just what it sounded like. Slavishly obedient, fawning, grovelling Iskoort, fanatically obsessed with obeying your every order, catering to your every whim. So much like the City of Beauty itself, the Iskoort are in distinct groups that are basically, they can't swap between them. And each different type of Iskoort has a different body type that better suits them to that job. So the industrial ones have bigger, stronger arms, broader shoulders. The warlike Iskoort have bigger heads and they have horns on their heads as well, little knobs of horns. They're all purpose-built for whatever purpose they need to fulfill. And they have guilds for practically every purpose you can imagine. Let's go over some of the guilds that we're told about in this book. Shopping, yes, exactly. Abandoned factory, I asked Guide. Not abandoned. The Worker Guild refuses to come back to work here until the Superstition and Magic Guild certifies that the place is free of the spirits of fictional characters. The simple folk believe that fictional characters are at least partly real and thus have spirits who wander the city, infesting buildings and engaging in various destructive behaviours. So naturally, the Superstition and Magic Guild must be called upon to control the problem, but the Worker Guild cannot agree on a fair price, so... We emerged several floors above the one where we'd first appeared. It was just what I needed. Narrow walkways between tall residential buildings, with shops on the ground level. Iskoort crammed everywhere. Iskoort mostly of a new type, shopper Iskoort. They shop? I asked Guide. That's it, they shop? Someone must buy what is created in the great factories and small craftworks, Guide said. The economy cannot function without people to buy things. How do we get the word to the house that we're here? I have only to mention it to a member of the News, Gossip and Speculation Guild, Guide said. So not only is the whole population segmented into these immovable groups, but that's also their names. They don't really have names, it's just their title. Just their title. And here's proof of that. Well, firstly, you've got Guide, who is the Guide, even though strangely he's part of the Trader, a probationary member of the Trader Guild. What does probationary mean in this context?
Probationary is usually like a trial period or...
Yeah, that's got me now. So, if they're strictly segmented, why is he a probationary member of the Trader Guild?
Probationary means relating to a process of testing or observing the character or abilities of a person who is new to a role or job.
So this changes my view of this. So they can change into different guilds. If he's a probationary member of the Traders Guild, but he's currently a guide, which means he must be part of a guide guild, then they can swap into other guilds. But you have to be tested. You have to meet the qualifications. You need to meet the qualifications of being a shopper. You'd be good at that. And I'd be part of the Ultra Great Guild. I already fill all the characteristics for that. Or the Excellent Brilliantness Guild. Or the Super Awesome Cool Guild. Or the Cringe Guild. No, you didn't hear that. But if Guide did get into the Trader Guild, he would probably be named Trader. He'd have a name change. Let's go over some examples. His full name was Guide, Grub of Skin Seller, brother of Memory Wholesaler. What a classy name, how inventive. Grub of Skin Seller, brother of Memory Wholesaler. So yeah, strictly segmented, but they can apply to go into a different guild. Would they then change into a different Isk body? Because we're going to go into that in a minute, but first let's just cover the culture, the cultural aspects and random facts of the Iskoort before we go on to their relevance to the plot and their history. Firstly, random fact, but since this is an AniLysis, I want to cover all the facts insofar as seems necessary. They go up and down stairs backwards from this quote. We went down a set of steps, something the Iskoort did literally backwards, but with surprising agility and speed. Despite the fact that all the Iskoort seem to be put into specific segments of society, there does appear to be some level of hierarchy, because most, if not all, living organisms do assemble into some form of hierarchy, and the Iskoort seem to be no different. And my clue comes from this quote. "He can call himself the Grand Guild Master as far as I'm concerned," Guide said happily. This doesn't specifically say that there is a guild Grand Master, but the concept is there that there's a Grand Master, that there's somebody who's above, like the Master Guild or something like that, or the King's Guild, which I imagine would just be one person. But you get my picture. There does seem to be at least some level of hierarchy to the Iskoort world. How good is the Iskoort technology? Well, we get a good idea about how advanced they are, and they do seem to be quite advanced. And not only can they build these magnificent structures, there's all sorts of organisms that can build magnificent structures but not be particularly clever. How clever are the Iskoort? Here are some examples of their advanced technology. Guide emitted a low diaphragm whine and said, "There is a small device that attaches to the head. It ties in directly to brainwaves and plays the memories as if you yourself were recalling them. And these memory headsets work on all species? We are visited by many species," Guide said. "The headsets have always worked, although not all species choose to indulge." "Elevators. You have elevators?" Marco raged. "The elevators are much less scenic," Guide said. "What value are memories of the inside of an elevator?" Guide touched a small wall panel. A small flat screen appeared. Muttering and whining to himself, Guide called up a star chart. They have star charts, so they clearly know what's going on out in space, but that's likely because of off-worlders. But they still use screens, so they're not using big hologram things. It's all done on a screen, which Axe mutters about and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, they've got that technology, they've got an awareness of space, and they can make screens do things. So you'd say that they were roughly about our level of intelligence. Now, I know that elevators aren't exactly advanced compared to us, but it's still, in a way, advanced technology. Speaking of off-worlders, basically other alien races, the Iskoort are very familiar with them, and this does tie into their history, but in modern times, they are certainly no strangers to the odd alien races coming down. In fact, it seems to be somewhat of a tourist stop, this Iskoort planet, the City of Beauty, and these quotes are evidence to that fact. "Forgive us, strangers," the leader of this crowd said. "We did not expect off-worlders today. Welcome to the City of Beauty. Do you require a guide? Do you wish to sell your memories, or perhaps any unnecessary body parts? The City of Beauty is temporary home to many, many off-worlders. They come to trade, like all who visit our world. They trade memories for boda salts. Howler memories are very valuable." So, alien races largely come to this place for trade. And the Iskoort have, of course, the Guide Guild, I imagine it's called, that will guide these off-worlders around the place. I imagine these off-worlders come to the Iskoort homeworld because of the way the Iskoort operate. They seem to be very, very productive, and I imagine that they produce a lot of valuable items. It seems to be the case. They've probably got a miners guild somewhere that are just they're happy to spend their lives mining various resources, sending it up, and then there'll be a crafts guild that puts it all together, and they have a jolly good time doing it. There doesn't seem to be much reluctance amongst the Iskoort. They seem to be pretty satisfied with this. So they probably do produce a lot of goods for off-worlders to come down and say, "Yeah, I'll give you my memories. Just I'll give me all that stuff. I'll give you my memories of the last week or so. I don't know." But that seems to be the way that it works, and it's just also a tourist stop. What sort of entertainments do they have on the Iskoort homeworld? Well, here's an example. You have never seen a memory show? Then that must be our first stop. It is the greatest of entertainments. Memory show. That would be very important to off-worlders. Because what if they don't know anything about a particular alien race? They'd say, oh, the Mac over there, we don't know much about them. I wonder if the Iskoort have any Mac memories. So they go down and they go sit in this memory show and say, I want to see a Mac memory. Put that on and say, oh, right, so that's the, that's the one. And it would be pretty valuable for scientific research and all that sort of stuff. So the Iskoort do provide great service. Not surprising that they're just the stop for all these other alien races to come down and trade their memories for. And the more memories that they trade for, the more off-worlders come to see of his memory. 'Cause what if we've got, I don't know, Joe Biden's memory? Actually, no, there won't be anything there. Not very valuable. I will buy your memories. Come and visit my execution parlour. Give me your clothing and I will give you credit. Here, eat this lava. Let it gestate and we'll split the proceeds between your heirs. There's a couple of interesting ones here. Ed's execution parlour. Execution parlour. It's just thrown in there and it's never really explored again. There's an execution parlour. Like you go, like a haircut. I'm going to go get executed today. Bizarre. I love it. And give me your clothing and I will give you credit. So memories are an item of currency, but there's also credit, which appears to be a separate currency, but that's never explored again. So I imagine it makes sense. You can trade a memory, but there are also other ways to trade for things. Probably not as used as much, but whatever. And also, we've mentioned that Guide is the grub of skin seller, and this Iskoort here says, "Eat this lava, let it gestate, and we'll split the yada yada yada." And heirs, so heirs. Firstly, so they reproduce very much like insects, so grubs, larvae, that sort of stuff. So that's your reproduction for you. So you probably lay some form of egg in much the same way that insects do. Let it gestate and we'll split the proceeds between your heirs. Your heirs. So that's what they call... An heir is basically your child who, when they grow up, is going to take your place. And considering what we know about how the Iskoort segment themselves, that makes total sense. That your kid is going to be grow up to be basically the same as you. Hence why they're called heirs, because they're going to fill your role when you eventually sod off this mortal coil. All in all, the Iskoort come along as very trader-oriented, like Del Boy from Only Fools and Horses. It's a planet of Del Boys. If you're American, you probably don't know what that... You know what Del Boy is, don't you? Only Fools and Horses? Female.
What was that?
You know Only Fools and Horses, don't you?
Only fools and horses?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, you're not British enough yet. I'll have to train you some more. But planet of Del Boys. Traders. Happy-go-lucky. Deals, that sort of thing. It's a planet of them. It's not really like any political system we have here on Earth. It is very strange where everybody's selling everything, but everything's also segmented into distinct groups. It's a combination of like all sorts of different political ideas that you wouldn't think to go together. It's very weird, but also very interesting. And the way that the Iskoort came about and how they are as a race makes it make sense in a way. It wouldn't work for us humans, not a chance. It wouldn't work for us at all. But the way that the Iskoort came about, which we'll cover now, makes it seem plausible. Let's now go into the quotes that will tell us about the history of the Iskoort, or more specifically, the Isk and the Yort. I must feed. You see, we Iskoort are not precisely what we seem at first. The body you see is of our symbiote. We are a symbiotic species, a large outer body, the Isk, and the inner self, the much smaller portion called the Yoort. A symbiote? Axe demanded, speaking for the first time. Do you mean that you're a parasite? Long ago, yes, Guide acknowledged. But what began as a parasitic relationship has become a truly symbiotic one. We function as a single creature. The two parts halves only separate every 3 days, when the Yoort must feed by swimming in the Yoort pool and absorbing. Axe's tail was at the Iskoort's throat before he could form the next word. Yerks. They're all yerks. Couple of things of note there, of course, is that he mentions Yoort pools and what is then later acknowledged to be Kandrona rays. So pretty much just like the Yerks, they have to feed from pools that are fueled by Kandrona rays. And this is where we learn that they are distant, maybe not so distant relatives of the Yerks, and they evolved in much the same way. Back many generations, the Yorts were parasites, as you said. They infested other species, but that was long ago. Since we formed our symbiotes, the combination of Isk and Yort, we have been as we are now. The Isk were not conquered by the Yoort, they were created. The Yoort moved violently to conquer other species and infest them, but this was not profitable, not in the long run. So the Yoort used biological engineering techniques to design and create a species specifically to be a symbiote. The Isk were true symbiotes. The Isk cannot live without the Yoort, and to ensure that this symbiosis would be real, the Yoort too were modified. Now Yoort cannot live without Isk, and Isk cannot live without Yoort. They are one creature with two parts. So we have two original creatures, the Isk, which are the ones we've described in this, the physical body, and the Yoort, which we can imagine look very similar to Yerks, basically slug things. So a Yoort probably looks like this, very much so. Not too different at all, because they fill the same function. As they've evolved to be symbiotes, there may be a few changes here and there, but I don't think enough time has passed, certainly not probably millions of years, enough time has passed for them to change dramatically or fuse with. They certainly haven't fused because they still have to come out and go into the Yoort pool. The Yoort pool. But they are very similar to Yerks, and they used to live like the Yerks, where they used to go from planet to planet infesting other races. But they got so advanced that they were able to design their own new bodies, and thought, why are we infesting other races and using up our resources there when we can just make these and live here? It seemed more profitable for them at the time, and since they love a good profit, they settled. And they're like, yeah, but this is cool for us now. We live here forever. We can just sell off memories, off-worlders coming in comes the money and the credits and the memories and whatever they enjoy doing. And yeah, they're living the good life. So why move on? And this all plays into the overall plot of this book, The Attack. Why did the Elamists send the Animorphs here to fight for the lives of the Iskoort? There is an impasse. A species I will not let Kryak take. A species he will not let me save. This species occupies a unique location in space-time. It is a turning point, and if Kryak can annihilate them, his power will grow. His goal becomes a lot closer. His forces become more deadly than ever. Kryak and I have reached an agreement on a way to decide the issue, to decide the fate of the Iskoort race. If Kryak wins, they will be attacked, subjugated, and annihilated by another species. This was why Kryak had to destroy the Iskoort, and why the Elamists couldn't allow it. Someday, maybe far in the future, Iskoort would meet Yerk, and the Yerks would see that there was another way. Now, of course, we can't be too clear on the Elamists' intent. We're sort of given an intent, but it's not always quite what you'd expect. And I believe, if you read this book, you'll understand that what happens by the end is that the Animorphs infiltrates the Howler collective memory and saves a race called the Shaft Den later down the line. So was this all an Elamist scheme to save this one race that nobody's ever heard of over there? It also disabled the Howlers to some extent, which are Kryak's main force, so those seem to be the reasons for this whole book happening. We're given the idea that it's because we want to save the Iskoort because 300 years down the line the Yerks might meet the Iskoort and decide to live that way of life as well. I doubt that. And considering in that quote just now, the Elamist said, if we don't save the Iskoort, Kryak will be more deadly than ever before. Well, if your aim involves something happening 300 years from now, then that doesn't make sense. So I'm leaning towards the former, that he had ulterior motives and he was just trying to make the Animorphs go along with it. That's the Ellimist game, really, you know. Animorphs, I'm doing it for reason A, but actually I'm doing it for reason B. You'll find that out later. Just pay no heed. Well, that's the Ellimist for you. His AniLysis is going to be fun, isn't it? What did you accomplish? No one knows the future. Not for certain. But it is now more likely than it was before that 300 years from now the Yeerks will encounter the Iskoort. They will realise that they are related, and the Yeerks will see that there is a better way. Sorry, Elmis, I just don't buy it. I think what you've done here is you like the Shaft Den, and you don't like the Howlers, so you're going to kill two birds with one stone, save the Shaft Den, and effectively disable the Howlers, and that's what this whole travelling to the Iskoort world was. But that's moving away from the Iskoort now. We've covered the basics of this species in general, culturally, historically, insofar as I can reach from reading this book, and I don't remember them being anywhere else in this series, certainly not in detail, maybe the off mention, but that pretty much covers the Iskoort. Have you learnt a lot today, my dear? No?
I feel like you wanted him to save the Iskoort so the Yeerks would find them eventually and stop murdering everyone.
300 years down the line?
Yeah.
Long after they've been defeated?
They might not be defeated.
He saved the Shaft Den and disabled the Howlers. That's a much more immediate effect. See, my lovely Pebble and I will be fighting about this after I've finished this recording.
Yeah.
And she will probably win. So I'm going to go prepare for that, and I hope you've enjoyed this AniLysis. It's been an interesting one. I like the Iskoort. It's a great book, and it's helped by the fact that this piece, just in this short space, not only do we get a pretty riveting plot, but we also get introduced to this alien race, which are both interesting, and the details are numerous, and it's fascinating. It's a great little book, although I did find a plot hole at the end. It's either a plot hole or Jake is incredibly stupid that I don't think I caught on to when I read the book initially. Sorry, Geek Truth 64, not a flawless book. Because when Jake morphs Howler, he gets flooded with the hive mind of the Howler, which means he's connected to the hive mind, which means he doesn't have to bring the Howlers along to strap a probe to one's head. He just has to put it on his own head if he's in the Howler morph, goes into the hive mind, he defeats him, no need for the fight at the end. But we can put that down to Jake's stupidity. I mean, he is a kid after all. Why are you doing that behind the camera? Alright, we're going to go have our fight now, so thank you very much for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learnt a little bit about the Iskoort and you can hold on to those memories forever, because someday you might be able to sell them to somebody. Anyway, if you have any suggestions for what you want in the next AniLysis, please put them in the comments below. I shall see you next time. Why you nudged my camera, female? Oh, bye then. Ta-ra.